Tonight, what we're going to focus on is actually the Little Tokyo area. Little Tokyo was affected by the exclusion orders. Starting with exclusion order, probably in the 30s, that's when they started to do the downtown area. And so tonight we have two of our volunteers. I feel so far away from them. We have two of our volunteers. Since 1992, the museum has relied on volunteers for so many things. They've done so much of the work and the labor. But we often forget that they carry a lot of the stories, because a lot of them actually went through this experience. So we're lucky to have Tohru Isobe over here, who was a resident who lived at Victoria Hotel. His parents ran a hotel here on Los Angeles Street. And Berk, who was once a staff person, but is a longtime volunteer now. And her parents worked at the Koyasan church here. So we'll be talking with them for the next 20 minutes. And think about questions you guys might have or other things that you'd want to know from them, because they do have a lot of experience here. So my first question to you two are, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences in downtown and what did your parents do? So Tohru, why don't you go first?
Is it on?
Yeah, just.
What time? I mean, what?
Just like before the war, what were your parents doing and their businesses and how it was for them?
I used to live about 2 blocks west of here, just on the fringe of Little Tokyo. And my father was in the hotel business. We didn't own the building, but we had a lease on the building and everything that's inside. 60 some odd rooms we had, and we took about 4 rooms to ourselves. It's a transient hotel. They come and they go, a bunch of laborers. We had maybe 5 or 6 permanent residents, that's about it. Every other rooms are just transient. And just like the map you got, it shows downstairs there was a Watanabe liquor store, a Watanabe restaurant. It's a real cheap restaurant where you could buy coffee and donuts for a dime in those days. And I went to school on the top of the Bunker Hill. It's gone now, you know. The school was located on the North Hill Street. Right now, if you go there, it's a big, what do you call that, cathedral, Queen of Angels or whatever. That's where the school used to be. So I went there 3 years, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And I was 15 when that order came. Of course, I didn't think too much of it, you know. How can they do this sort of thing? But I wasn't thinking like some of the people. It was affected physically, not physically, mentally and emotionally. They were really upset. But I was only 15 years old, so I don't even think about that kind of stuff, you know. But how can they do this to us? We learned at the school about Constitution and all that stuff, but then that's nothing but a piece of paper, I thought. And we had maybe 4 weeks after that order came out. And I quit school for 2 weeks prior to that date, prepare for the big haul, you know. And my father was taken away by the FBI, just like most of the families. So
when was your father taken?
December 7th, the very day. And before that, you saw the picture of Bainbridge Island. Before Bainbridge Island, the Terminal Islanders were kicked out of their homes in 48-hour notice. They lost everything. And across the street from our hotel, there was a restaurant, very famous restaurant, Kawafuku. The order came from the same prefecture, Shizuoka again. And Terminal Island, so there's a lot of Shizokans over there. When they kicked out, he shut down the restaurant, made all the rooms available for Terminal Islanders. This was back in February 27 to 28. So from there, about months later, they had to take government order to be removed for the second time. But the first removal in the Terminal Island was the order of the U.S. Navy, because Terminal Island community, over 3,000 people, Japanese ancestors live there. A lot of people, fishermen, their wives of the cavalry. But that ended, like I say, February 28.
Okay. I mean, that's a very interesting story, because this whole idea of Terminal Island is right on the waterfront. And so that was evacuated very early on as well. But it's an illustration of the community trying to help their friends or the community live somewhere, because the government said Terminal Island's got to be closed in 48 hours. So it's a very tragic story. And Kawafuku, the restaurant, would shutter its doors, stop business, just to help the community. So lose the business just to help their partners. June, maybe we could talk to you a little bit about sort of what did your family do in this area and some of your memories growing up here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming and listening to our stories. I grew up, I was living in Hollywood, but I would come down to Little Tokyo in the afternoons during the weekdays, and on Sundays to the Koyasan Church, which was right down here, right next to this building. It's not there anymore, but there's a tree there. And we would have our Sunday school programs. We would have I was taking Japanese dancing and Japanese kabuki. We had an all-girls troupe here, and we would practice during the week and on Saturdays. So we grew up here. I was about from the ages of 5, 6, 7 to, I was evacuated when I was from Los Angeles when I was 10. But living in Little Tokyo was so much fun then. Our parents didn't know where we were. We didn't know where our parents were, but we just ran around up and down the streets. And if we wanted to go from First Street to Temple, we just went through somebody's store, and they would tell us to scram, and we're just like, it was a kid's world. And if we wanted to eat something or take something, they would know our parents, so then they would just charge our parents, and we would just pick up a comic book, and my parents would give me 3 pennies on Sundays. 1 penny for the church offering, and 2 pennies to buy candy afterwards, after church. So the kids would just run around town, run around these streets here, and we would go buy candy. If they wanted to really get rid of us, they would give us a dime and tell us to go see a movie on First Street, and we would go see a Japanese movie, and we would come out and pretend like we're like the samurai and things like that. So growing up here in Little Tokyo was a lot of fun. It was a time of innocence. We would be throwing the ball over the Buddhist church, saying "Ali Ali accent, free, free, free," and we would be yelling back and forth. And our parents would come out and say, "You're making too much noise. Go play somewhere else." So then we would go out in the streets and play. And so I guess they figured we'll come back whenever we got hungry, and we were just free to roam the streets. Little Tokyo actually started from the river or the bridge, and it started on the other side of Alameda, and it slowly worked its way all the way up to Main Street here, and then from Temple all the way to about 7th Street. There was about 31,000 Japanese living right in this area. And most of them had come here to start a business. And all the people that worked here, had businesses here, helped each other. If some store or some restaurant was having a hard time, they would encourage each other to go buy something or go eat at that restaurant. And everybody helped each other. So it was a real community feeling. And then they started the Nisei Week traditions to encourage people to come to Little Tokyo to shop. So everything was done for the community, and our parents worked really, really hard to make it a successful community. We even had a theater house called Yamato Hall, where Parker Center now is, standing, that building, and there we would perform Japanese dance, Japanese kabuki plays. They had Nisei Week talent shows, and then on the top floor was a gambling den, but we didn't go up there, but we performed on the lower floors. And so it was a place where Japanese culture would thrive. If you walked down First Street, you could hear, and I could still hear, the shamisen playing, the taiko drums, the singing, and we would go there for art, flower lessons, sewing lessons, and it was just this lovely, lovely community. So when December 7th came, our family was having a prayer meeting from the Koyasan Buddhist Church, and as soon as we heard the announcement on the radio, we were all, the people were sitting there, and we heard a knock on the door, and the FBI were there immediately, and they took the reverend, I don't remember his name, and they took 3 other men, and they just said, just get your hats, and they were gone. And I remember thinking, well, where are they going? What's going on? I didn't understand. They said Japan, they said war, but to our minds, that was like something so far away because we didn't know Japan. We just knew we were going to school every day, and we weren't aware that we were even at war with a country that my parents came from. It was all very innocent. So when we saw the sign that you'll see tonight, it was a big shock to us that we now are being told we are not to live here anymore, and that we have to get rid of everything and move.
Maybe you could just mention a little bit about the ABC list.
Oh yeah, okay. I worked on the Tuna Canyon exhibit, which is here right now at the museum. Through the Freedom of Information Act, we found out that our researcher went to Washington, D.C., and he found all these documents. Found documents that said that from 1931, which was 10 years before Pearl Harbor actually happened, that the FBI started making lists of Japanese people. It's like a registry that they talk about today. The A list were Shinto priests and Buddhist priests. B was anybody that taught judo or kendo or Japanese language school. They thought all these people were trying to brainwash us to be loyal to Japan. And then the C list were the businessmen and the farmers and the community leaders. So they felt that if all of these people were taken away and put away, that our community would lose all of its leaders. Well, as it so happened, what I hear like today with the immigration, they took the fathers and they left the mothers with the kids. The mothers couldn't speak English. The children didn't know what was going on, and they just took the father away without any explanation, without saying where we were going to take them. Where are you going? They won't say where. They just took him out. And some people, even like Tohru's family, they didn't know for months where their father had been taken. Finally found out that he was taken to Missoula, Montana, and never notified the family. So a lot of these women were left trying to take care of the children. They couldn't work, they couldn't speak, so many of them had to move out of the area and go live with their other family members. And everybody talks about the men, but it was the women that held those families together at that time. They had to get the family ready, the children ready to go to camp. So here the husbands are locked up at Tuna Canyon, which is 15 miles away from City Hall here in the northern end of San Fernando Valley. And I didn't even know it was there. There were about 3,000 men who were processed there. They brought them there first they take them to county jail, and they stayed there a couple of nights, and then they took them to Tuna Canyon. And from Tuna Canyon, they would send them to Billings, Montana, Bismarck, North Dakota, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Crystal City, Texas. These were all U.S. justice camps. These were not EO 9066 camps. These were before EO 9066. But when they talk about putting away immigrant parents away from their children today, it's just like a knife that just goes right to my heart, because you just can't separate children from their parents. I mean, it's just so inhuman to do that. So I am really upset when they talk about separating children from their parents. But that's what happened back in 1941. They were arrested hourly. They would have a list of hourly people that were arrested and taken away, and with no explanation, with no arrest warrants, just an FBI warrant saying, you're coming with us.
Right, but like you said, they have been organizing this list for almost 10 years.
Right.
And you're right, it's inhuman to do that, but they did that to sort of disable the community from being able to, fight against this or make it less capable. So let me go back to Tohru. Is there anything you want to talk about as far as, like, when you were 15, you're just a kid, right? You're having so much fun. Are there any good memories you have of Little Tokyo?
Well, I went to school, Japanese language school for 1 year, and then I quit because I knew the language already. But
like, do you remember running around Little Tokyo or like?
I roam around this neighborhood every day, just about. And I was too young to know, but the Central, used to be Central Avenue. It was open to traffic those days in the Jackson Street. It's Temple now, but there was a Jackson Street. There was a brick building, red brick building, dead across the dead end of this Central Avenue. And then there was an organization called Yamato Club. You know about that? It was organized around turn of the century. From Seattle to San Diego, they opened up gambling houses. They're run by Yakuza gangsters from Japan. And this area was one of the bigger one. This headquarters. But then by Pearl Harbor, it was just gone, But I knew a few people who actually were in there. I met them in the camp. But I hear, this is just hearsay I hear from my parents and their friends. They're in the 40s, you know, I mean, 40s and 50s at that time, they're middle-aged people. I just hang around and listen to what they're talking about. That's how I learn things.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay, so now if we could talk a little bit about, like all this stuff is happening, your parents, your father was taken away, and then you start to see the exclusion orders come up. Can you talk a little bit about this whole idea of moving day and what it was?
Yeah, you know, the notice, they're posted all over the place, like window, banks, business, signposts and everything. But I saw it, I didn't read it, I knew what it was because I don't have to worry about anything. I was only 15. But the parents just really had a rough time because most of the head of the family was arrested by FBI, you know. We had 2 cars. It's not a new car, but those are gone. Those days, I don't even know what there was such thing as a pink slip, ownership certificate, things of that kind of stuff. I know nothing about those. And all the furnishings for the 60 some odd rooms, lost. And it was not the saddest thing about that time is we had a pet dog. Just like anybody else, you have to abandon those pets, you know. That's the hardest thing in those days.
Do you remember where you were picked up? Do you remember getting picked up by the buses?
No, I never. I was stopped a few times, but you know, my classmate, some Chinese classmates, they gave me a badge. I'm a Chinese. I put that on and walk around after curfew. Otherwise, they'll pick you up.
Oh, so you were a bad kid.
Go see a movie and things like that, you know. I wear that pants. That's ridiculous, I think.
What about you, June? Do you have any memories? So now that you see the evacuation orders and stuff, and like, how did you have to pack your bags or any stories of that experience?
My sister would take me to movies on Sunday afternoons in Hollywood, and we were coming home from one of the movies, Sonia Henney or Deanna Durbin, I can't remember, and we were walking, had a curry ice cream, and we came upon our house, our block, and we saw on the telephone post, we saw the instruction, and it said Japanese American. Well, I didn't understand it all. My sister explained that they're removing all Japanese, and my sister was in. She'll be graduating from Belmont High School, so she had taken civics class. So she went home and told my parents, "You're going to have to go to camp, but we're American citizens, so we don't have to go to camp, but you go to camp, and we'll wait for you here." And but we all had to leave. We had to turn in our radios to the police station. We had to, within a week, get rid of everything we owned. And my brother and I, we can't remember if my dad left the truck there in the driveway or if he sold it, or if we had a nursery in the backyard with a lot of plants. We don't know what happened to those plants. But I do remember one night when my sister and I and my mother, we just put everything in a big pile in our backyard, all our china dishes, all the pictures, all the photographs, everything that was anything Japanese, and we just had a big bonfire. And I think a lot of families did that. They burned everything, they broke everything, just so that we wouldn't be caught by the FBI having anything to do with Japan and be arrested. So that was very, very vivid in my mind. And then when they picked us up, our family went on a bus from 5th Street here, 5th and San Pedro. There were about 3 or 4 buses lined up, and we got on that bus. And of course, we don't know where we're going. We don't know if we're going to go to Manzanar. We don't know if we're going to go to Poston, and I don't think we even heard of Santa Anita. So we didn't know what to put in our suitcases. I think my father broke down his shamisen into 3 pieces and put it in one of his suitcases. And my brother says he thinks he tried to sneak a Philco portable radio into camp. And my mother tried to take a hot plate to camp, but that was confiscated. As soon as we got to Santa Anita, they inspected everything. They took everything that was illegal to have, and we got 3 bags. We each got a bag to put hay into the bags, and that was going to be our mattress. And my brothers and sisters would tease me, and they said, "There's snakes in those bags, so you better be careful." So I think my brothers and sisters try to make me feel good and not worry. My parents never showed any anger. They never cried. They never showed that they were upset, and that everything was going to be okay. And that's the way we were. The children were protected. And so going into camp, I thought, oh, we get a bus ride? It's like, oh boy, we get a bus ride. And I'm not thinking of the injustice of it all. It's only when I got older and I realized that our rights had been violated, and that emotionally, it felt like we were just violated and abused by our own very government that we had trusted. And my sister was really upset because she felt that we are American citizens, and here we are told we're nothing. We have nothing to stand on. And we were placed in horse stalls and forced to live in horse stalls for 5 months until they could build concentration camps to send us to Aurora, Arkansas, to Amachi, to Heart Mountain, and the other concentration camps, which was an improvement over the horse stalls, I guess.
So Jude's talking about the assembly centers, which were the ones that were hastily built to house tens of thousands of people. I think Santa Anita had up to 19,000 people, about 7,000 who had to live in horse stalls. Basically just cleaned up, but there were still many people who got sick, would develop lung disease from having to sleep in those. Tohru, do you have any memories of Santa Anita?
Like I said before, I got on the bus right here in front of this building on May the 9th to go to Santa Anita on the bus. And it was a big chaos, and they didn't move us by our names, by the numbers. They give us each one of us a binary number, and you go by that. And I sort of expected almost exactly what would happen to me. It's just like, I never was in the army camp, but that reminded me of, because our relatives and cousins drafted into the army before the war, and they were talking about their meals and mess hall and things. And it was just like that. Santa Anita, almost 19,000 people lived there. I lived there for 4 months. And I could, our Berk right next to Huntington Drive, facing the old City Hall. And I could see the lights of the downtown Arcadia, like movie marquees and things like that. You could see it from the camp.
But you couldn't go.
No. You get shot.
Yes.
No, that's okay. I mean,
It's for me, it's just wonderful to be able to hear all these stories from our volunteers. I just want to, is Monica here? Or can we pass out those notices right there? Christina, grab those notices. So we're just going to pass out some of the notices from the exclusion order number 1 so you guys can read them. You guys can take them home. They're souvenirs. But those are the first ones that were issued to people. And it has, in its core, they're basically instructions telling people what to do, like they were mentioning, like you'd have to liquidate your stuff. And it's interesting to see because these are the first ones that were written. And you could see they would evolve over time. They would become much more precise in their wordings. So initially they thought this was going to be a volunteer program, that people would voluntarily leave, and there were about 8,000 people who did leave. But a month later, they realized that this was not going to happen in a timely manner. So that's when they started the forced exclusion of Japanese Americans. And as you can tell by listening to Tohru and June, they were just Americans. They were just American kids growing up. And like Tohru says, he's 15 years old. He's worrying about a lot of different things, being a 15-year-old kid. And you know, his parents are trying to shield them and protect them and not make them feel bad or worried or anything, trying to be parents and protecting them. But it's when you think about it, it's a very difficult situation. So maybe you could talk just about your bus ride when people were waving at you.
Yeah, it was very strange because in a sense, I was excited to get on a bus because I've never been on a bus before. And so here I am on this bus, and I guess there's about 3 or 4 buses going down the street. And of course, there's no freeway, so they took us on some streets, but I don't know what the name of the street was, but we came upon a school, and I saw a bunch of kids running up to the fence of the school, and I got all excited, and I stood up, and I was waving back to them until I saw a sign that somebody had scribbled out, "Good riddance, Japs." And then I just sort of sat down because I realized that they weren't saying goodbye, a friendly goodbye. I think it shocked me because I had never been in a place where I was forced to confront any kind of racial prejudice like that. And that was really shocking to me to see that sign. And when my brother and we were interviewed by ESPN, my brother was 16 at the time, and so all he did, he couldn't stand the smell of the barracks, so all he did was play baseball all day long and come home to sleep. And so he was ready to tell ESPN about the sports program. And every time he would start to talk, my brother just broke down and cried. And I never saw my brother cry before, but he said, we both just thought about our parents. Our parents were now gone. The apology from the president was too late. Our parents were all dead. Most of the older Issei's who really suffered were all dead. And we younger ones who were like 10 years old, 16, we heard the apology, but it didn't mean as much to us as it would have been to our parents who lost everything.
And Tohru, maybe you could share your story about when you visited your parents in camp?
visited Japan.
No, when you visited your parents in
When
camp.
my parents.
You were working in farms and stuff like that?
That's after the hot mountain. That hot mountain, yeah. Well, this is the wartime, and there was a manpower shortage outside, so they come looking for farm laborers in the camp. That's what happened. Those two main jobs they offered was either railroad or farm. Those two. And eventually, other jobs opened up, and the people started to go a bit west and east coast. Well, that comes years later. But inside the camp, I just learned recently that they took farm laborers from Santa Anita. I didn't know about that because I was probably too young. You know.
I was just referring to a story he had that after he was working in the farm labor camps, he actually did visit his parents in camp. And then they sent him a bill for staying because he was free from camps, but because he stayed there for 2 months, he got a bill for food and for room and boarding, which he has yet to pay.
Yeah, you know, there are two types of leaves. Temporary leave is like seasonal. You go out to help the farmers harvest. After the season is over, you have to come back to camp because that is your residence. But a year later, they offer this what they call permanent indefinite leave. In that case, you sign your contract to some potential the employers in the Midwest, and they provide transportation, food, and everything to get there. Once you get out of the camp, you have no connection whatsoever. You're outsider. They give you $50. That's the money they give you to cut off the people who live on indefinite leave. And so I did that. And half a year later, I went back to visit my parents, which is okay. And I went out, and certified mail followed me wherever I went. You know, they're demanding 50 cents a day for room and board for about 2 months of those. I ignored it. I never paid. What they gonna do? Put me back in jail?
Literally back in jail. So at this point, though, we're running out of time. So I would like to say, does anyone have any questions for our two guests, Jun or Tohru?
So when you were in camp, I'm assuming you just had like American school.
Oh yeah.
So
They have to bring in people from outside because the camp, the former teachers that was incarcerated in the camp, they didn't have enough. So they have to bring in people from outside for high school teachers and so forth. Regular school, pretty good school, high standards.
So my question is, what did they teach you about American government? What did they say about the Constitution?
Nothing to do with it, just same as any other outside all-white school, I guess. That's it. You're in the camp, but then, so what? They don't talk about that sort of thing.
We stood up like you all, everybody else did, every day, saluting the flag and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. That's the way we started our class every day in camp. They even made my parents, who only spoke Japanese, they taught them how to say the Pledge of Allegiance in English. They had to take English classes. We didn't have any Japanese classes. I was happy about that. I didn't want to go to Japanese school. But they had said, you can't speak Japanese. Well, later on, they relaxed that because the older Japanese, in order to keep up the morale, they said, okay, you can have Japanese entertainment like Japanese dancing, Japanese kabuki. So we started having talent shows, and so we danced for our parents. Japanese dancing and things like that. But the Boy Scout troops, Heart Mountain had a drum and bugle corps. Bob Uragami was in Amachi. He's one of our volunteers here. And he has a bugle, and also it shows in the EO 9066 exhibit, a plastic bugle plus the regular bugle. The Boy Scouts were very supportive of the children in camp. And in Heart Mountain, they even took them camping to the Yellowstone Park for 1 week. And then they had to go back to camp. But the Boy Scout program was very strong in camp. So, and they were all saluting. Bill Shishima says, we were saluting the flag like this, and they made us stop because it looked like Heil Hitler, you know, so they told them to put their hands down. But it was all English school. And I was in rural Arkansas, so our teachers were from Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and they all had heavy, heavy Southern accents. And so my brother said, they're really not teaching us English.
Are there any other questions for our?
I'd always wondered about this because I feel, as a descendant, I always have mixed feelings about this. I'd always wondered your perspective on Pearl Harbor, the attack itself, because it was technically your country, attacking against technically your country. So I'd always just wondered, like, your perspective going actually through the event, because I've never known exactly how to feel about it, and I was just wondering your perspective on that.
Me?
Whoever.
Well, it was very sad, you know, after Japan is a country my parents came from. Because I was born here, but as an American, I thought that was a very stupid thing they did. But they had no chance of winning, and they knew that. Like Admiral Yamamoto was dead against the war. So it's not a Navy was against the war. But the bull-headed army controlled the government in those days. So whatever they did, just force the people to do those things. Original idea was just take the islands in the Pacific, and they never had intention of going beyond that. So they could hold on 8 or 9 months. That's what they figured. Then that way the Americans get tired, just like all the world we had, you know, Vietnam, Korea, people were dead against the wars. So they thought that would happen, but it never happened because of the FDR was smart that way. He had to arouse people to the fighting mood. That's what they did. The slogan was, remember Pearl Harbor.
Well, yeah, war itself is terrible and tragic for everybody concerned, no matter if you're the enemy or you're the victim. As for us, we thought of ourselves as Americans, and so we had the face of the enemy, but the heart of an American. I felt very American, even though I did Japanese dance, even though I participated in all the cultural things. When I went home or when I played with my friends, we spoke American. And we had to memorize things to say in Japanese. But I want to tell you one thing. I've had the privilege of interviewing people from the descendants of the people at Tuna Canyon. The exhibit is here. And all the people that were in Tuna Canyon are all now gone. So now we have to depend on the descendants and the grandchildren to tell us their stories. This one woman said, and there were 2 of them that said, my father was behind barbed wires at Tuna Canyon, They had to stand 10 feet away from the fence. They couldn't come up to the fence to see the family. But he shouted at his son, who had come to visit him. He says, I'm here behind the barbed wires, but you remember that you're an American and don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. You go fight for your country. And this woman says she was just shocked that her father would say that to her brother because she thought he would be so bitter. But the people that were in those camps, they were so disappointed that Japan chose to go to war because they were working for the peace between Japan and America, and they felt as betrayed as the Americans did. They worked so hard to have peace between the two countries. And so for this father to tell his son, and then another person told me also the same thing, that the family had about 4 other families living on a compound at nursery that they grew flowers and plants. And the man gathered, before he left, he gathered all the families together in the living room, and he says, I'm going there because I'm being arrested, but you all remember that you're Americans and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And I think that really resonated to me when I heard that, because that's how we all felt. So we had young men enlist in the Army to go out and prove loyalty to the United States. And because they did that, our parents finally, after the war was over, in 1953, were able to become naturalized citizens. But it was because these young men stepped forward and said, I'm going to fight for our country, which is the United States. And some of them had to go in the Pacific Theater to become translators. And so they're, I mean, you even heard of some fighting their own family in Japan. The uncle or somebody would be in the Japanese army, and here they're in the American army. But there were cases like that. But it goes to, because they wanted to prove that we're Americans. And they did that. They became, 442, the Go for Broke exhibit across the street. I hope you get a chance to see all that. They were the highest decorated unit. I'm proud to say that my brother was one of them, and he was lucky to come back, but some didn't come back, but they all felt the same way. We just really want to fight for our country.
Okay, and this is actually a barrack that you guys can all come get one at the end of the program, but it's based on the Roar camp, which is where June was.
Yeah, the Roar camp, each camp is a little different. Our camp, the larger families lived on the 2 Inn, and then a couple would live right here, and then families with 2 or 3 children would live in the center section. So they had families of 4 here, 2, a couple here with no children. And then if you had 5 or more children, you lived in one of the end ones. And we lived in one of the end ones. My brother, my sister, myself, my dad, and my mother, we all lived in one room, which was about, 10 by 12, with beds and a pot-belly stove. And we hung pictures of movie stars on our wall. And my parents grew strawberries in the yard, different kind of vegetables. And so we try to make it as homey as we can at that time. And we even sang songs. In Santa Anita, it was very popular that we would have a song fest, and we would sing songs like, on Christian Soldier and USC, UCLA fight songs, things like that, and the US Marine songs, even though we were behind barbed wires. It was It was just a natural thing to do. Everybody was still loyal to their colleges in camp.
Okay, thank you.